So, right after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the brand new Muslim state was plunged into a crisis. I mean, a crisis that threatened to completely tear it apart before it could even get started. This is the story of that moment, a real trial by fire that would decide the future of this new nation. Just try to imagine being in Medina at that moment. The founder of your state, your leader, has just passed away. And right away, the two great superpowers of the time, the Byzantine and Persian empires, they see an opportunity. They look at this new power rising in Arabia and think, okay, now's our chance to, as the sources put it, clip its wings and just snuff it out. And that's really the big question here, isn't it? Because the threat wasn't just coming from the outside. You could argue the even bigger danger was actually coming from within. How on earth do you hold everything together when the world is actively trying to pull you apart from every direction? All right, so to really get into that question, we first have to understand just how bad the situation was. This wasn't just one single problem. The young state was right on the edge, fighting a war on multiple fronts, all at the same time. The new Caliph, Abu Bakr, was getting intelligence reports that were just incredibly alarming. The empires weren't just sitting back and watching. No, they were actively fanning the flames. They were shipping weapons, sending troops, pouring money in, and even giving strategic battle plans to the Arab tribes that were rebelling against Medina. They were basically funding a proxy war to try and destroy the state from the inside out. Now, here's what's so fascinating. Look at Abu Bakr's response. With all these rebellions popping up at home, the logical move would be to pull all your forces back, right? Protect the capital. But he did the exact opposite. He sent an army, the army of Usama, right to the northern border, just as the Prophet had planned. It was such a powerful message. He was telling the empires and the rebels, we are not weak, we will not back down. We are strong enough to handle any threat, whether it's from the outside or from within. But, as dangerous as those external threats were, the cracks forming on the inside were arguably even more serious. And this wasn't just a political rebellion about who's in charge or who pays tribute. This was a crisis that went right to the very heart of the faith itself. So all of a sudden, some tribes start refusing to pay zakat, the obligatory charity. Their argument basically was that this was a tax they paid to the Prophet himself. And now that he was gone, well, they figured that obligation was gone too. They completely misunderstood it as a political tax, not a fundamental pillar of their religion. But that's a profound misunderstanding of what zakah is all about. The Quran itself makes it so clear that zakat is not a tax for a ruler. As this verse explains, it's a way for the person giving it to achieve spiritual purification. It purifies their wealth, it purifies their soul. It's a direct relationship between the believer and God, which the Prophet facilitated. And this is the crucial point. For Abu Bakr, this was never, ever about the money and the state treasury. This was about preserving the pure, undiluted teachings of Islam. If he let zakat go, it would be like changing a fundamental pillar of the faith, and that would compromise the spiritual well-being of the whole community. He absolutely had to hold the line. And as if an external war and a massive internal crisis weren't enough, a third threat started exploding across the peninsula. You had these ambitious men who saw a power vacuum and decided they'd try to fill it themselves by claiming they were prophets. And nothing, captures the essence of this threat better than this chilling quote from the most famous of these false prophets, Musaylima. His followers were losing a battle, and they asked him, "What about that divine victory you promised us?" And this was his answer. It just lays his entire ideology bare. This isn't about God. It's not about truth. It's all about tribal power and getting rich. And this huge difference in ideology, it created two completely different kinds of armies. You can really see the contrast here. On one side, you have an army fighting for tribal gain, driven by greed, with loyalties that could shift at any moment. They weren't truly united. But on the other side, you had the Muslim army. They were bound together by a single, powerful belief. They trusted each other with their lives. Their supply lines were safe, and they were, as the sources say, protected from the rear because they knew their brothers in faith had their backs. That unity, that was their ultimate weapon. So in the end, it was this unwavering commitment to their principles, to their faith, that completely turned the tide. All those complex plots, all that foreign money from the empires, the rebellions, they all just started to fall apart. And why? Because they slammed up against something they couldn't break, the solid foundation of a society that had been educated and unified by the Prophet himself. Their schemes were totally foiled by the deep, unshakable unity of the believers. This verse from the Quran really gave the Muslims immense confidence during this whole period. It reflects a core belief that when people plot and scheme against the divine truth, their plans will ultimately backfire and only destroy themselves. Now, this wasn't just some kind of blind faith, it was a confidence that was rooted in principle. They truly believed that as long as they held on to what was right, the final outcome was guaranteed to be in their favor. It gave them this incredible psychological and spiritual strength to endure what the sources call the greatest international assault and still come out on top. So the end of these wars wasn't just about survival. It was about forging a foundation that would last for hundreds of years. Just look at what came out of all this. The trials of these wars actually purified the community. Islam's core beliefs were now crystal clear, totally separate from the old ideas of tribalism. Its main principles were kept safe, with no distortion, and, maybe most importantly, a whole new generation of leaders was forged in that fire, their commitment and their skills tested and proven. And this is the key takeaway. The apostasy wars proved that the Muslim community wasn't just a random collection of people. No, it was a cohesive society, a nation built on what the sources keep calling a solid base, a foundation that wasn't weak or flimsy but was hard and tough because it was so deeply connected to its faith. And with that solid base finally secure, the Arabian Peninsula was totally transformed. It became, as one source so beautifully describes it, a wellspring, a source of strength, of knowledge, and faith, from which Islam could then begin to flow out to every corner of the earth, carried by that new generation of leaders. So we'll end with this thought. The apostasy wars were the ultimate trial by fire for the new Muslim state. But the foundation built by the Prophet, it didn't crack under all that pressure. It hardened. It set the stage for everything that was still to come. It proved that a community built on principle couldn't just survive the impossible. It could emerge from it stronger than ever before.